Why is there no bridge here? The distance between the very tip of Spain, Tarifa, and Adalia in Morocco is a mere 10 kilometers. Yet, in order to travel from one place to the other, you can't just drive through. Instead, you have to take a ferry from Tarifa to Tangier and then drive almost 3 hours to Adalia from the inside of Morocco. A journey that could have taken 10 minutes takes instead multiple hours. A similar situation exists inside a country itself, Italy. The main boot, if you will, is separated from the also Italian island of Sicily by only 5 kilometers, even less. Yet there's no bridge here either. They actually built a boat that has train tracks on it so that the train stops at the coast, it's loaded onto a ferry, and then it keeps going on the other side. But if there was a bridge, the trip would take maybe 5 minutes, probably less by train, saving people all that time of loading and unloading a literal train onto a boat. Throughout Europe, there are a number of examples of this. Places that are separated by pretty narrow bodies of water and where the way to get across seems overly complicated. For the most part, there are very valid reasons for a bridge not existing. So in this video, we're going to find out what those reasons are. I'm gonna show you 5 places. First, the Gibraltar Strait, then the tiny gap between Italy and Sicily, I think it's the Strait of Messina, then this super specific local case in Norway between Svelvik and Verket, you'll understand why when we get to it, then the 25-kilometer one between North and South New Zealand, which I know isn't in Europe, but it's interesting to take a look at, and also the gap between Ireland and Scotland. You may notice my voice is a little off. I've had a cold for the past week, which is weird because very high temperatures, but sorry about that. Let's start with the Gibraltar Strait. This is a big one because it would create a direct link between Europe and Africa, similar to how Europe and Asia are connected through the Dardanelles Strait or how Africa and Asia are connected in the Suez. This is the narrow stretch of sea between the southern tip of Spain and the northern coast of Morocco. It's only about 10 kilometers wide at its narrowest point, so you'd think that's shorter than my commute to work, so why not build a bridge? Well, unfortunately, this isn't your average river crossing. The waters here are deep, like deep. We're talking about 900 meters in some places, nearly a kilometer straight down. Most suspension bridges that you know, like the Golden Gate or the Akashi Kaikyo in Japan, are built over much shallower areas. Foundations that deep would be a nightmare for engineers, especially given the unstable seabed and strong underwater currents. And then there's the whole issue of tectonics. This is where the Eurasian and African plates meet. Earthquakes shifting around and the occasional surprise from below make it practically impossible. Politically, it's also a sensitive spot. Europe and Africa, EU and non-EU, Schengen and non-Schengen, and really Spain versus Morocco, which oftentimes don't have the best relationship due to Spain's continued control of their plazas de soberanía, old colonies within Morocco, plus their support of the El Sahrawi independence movement against Morocco. Building a permanent link would require serious bilateral cooperation. It's been considered, especially recently, because Portugal, Spain, and Morocco are going to host the World Cup together, and Spain actually at one point pitched a tunnel idea, similar to the Channel Tunnel that links England and France. This was in the 1980s, but cost estimates were astronomical and nothing ever materialized. Right now, the ferry does a pretty good job, even if it does take longer than it could. Oh my god, guys, it is so warm. You have no idea. And it's like stuffy. I'm really concerned about how warm it's been getting recently in the summer. I don't know, I can't deal with this. And something else that concerns me is my data being leaked online. Have you ever wondered how specific companies get your email when you get all of that spam on your inbox? Well, it's probably because either somebody leaked, hacked, or sold your personal information online. Which brings us to the sponsor of today's video, DeleteMe. DeleteMe is a fantastic service that searches through the internet looking for your personal information. They reach out to data brokers on your behalf and request that your information be removed from their databases. This happens when you fill out your personal information online for some service that you actually signed up for, but unknown to you, they then sell that information. Or maybe their databases were hacked. And this makes it so that your personal data is available for other companies to purchase. Now, the best case scenario is you just get some annoying spam email that you end up blocking. The worst case scenario is identity theft. And so DeleteMe is a great way to prevent this. I've been using it myself and I just received my first report. They reached out to a number of data brokers, checked if my information was on there, and on the one that they did find had my information, they requested the removal. It's also a great peace of mind to check that all of these other companies don't have my information, so I know that it's safe from being leaked out or sold. If you want to try DeleteMe and make sure that your personal data isn't floating around on the internet, you should go to joindeleteme.com/knowledge and you will get 20% off your subscription. Thank you to them for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to it. Next, why is there no bridge between Italy and Sicily? The Strait of Messina separates mainland Italy from the rest of the island. It's only about 5 kilometers wide. You could practically swim across it on a good day. My ego definitely tells me that I could do it. I probably couldn't. This has been one of the most talked about bridge projects in Europe for decades. The Italians even started planning one several times. Designs exist, schematics too, even artists' renditions of what it would look like. One of them would have been the world's longest single-span suspension bridge, stretching just over 3 kilometers. So why isn't it there today? Politics and money. Mostly. Every time a government got serious about it, they either fell out of power or changed priorities. And then there's the terrain. On both sides, the land rises steeply, which makes anchoring the bridge towers a challenge. You combine that with high winds in the strait, strong tidal currents, seismic activity too. There's a pretty relevant volcano nearby, and it starts looking like a pretty risky investment. There's a ferry running there too, and although it's not the most modern, it gets the job done. Plus, to be honest, while it does take time, the train transfer thing is pretty badass, that it's actually something we could figure out, loading a train onto a ship. Maybe someday the bridge will happen, but it's become such a political football that most people just roll their eyes when it comes up. Now I'm gonna zoom in on a super specific case within Norway. My fiance told me about this. I wouldn't have known about it otherwise. These two towns sit on opposite sides of the Drammen fjord, about 200 meters apart. You heard that right, 200 meters. I mean, come on, I could definitely swim across that. So why is there no bridge? Well, there is a ferry, one of the shortest car ferries in the world. In fact, it takes like 5 minutes. But why no bridge? It turns out building one is not as easy as it seems, despite the short distance. First, there's the traffic volume. We're not talking about thousands of cars a day here. It's a pretty chill route that makes a large infrastructure investment kind of hard to justify. Second, the fjord is a navigable waterway. Big ships still go up and down to reach Drammen and other ports. A low bridge would block them, and a high bridge would need ramps. So long they would stretch halfway back to Oslo. A tunnel is like overkill. People in the area have discussed it many times. There have been feasibility studies, but they always come back to the same conclusion. The ferry is simpler and cheaper. The ship volume is much higher and more important than that of the cars. This is a super specific example that shows us two types of reasons why sometimes bridges aren't built. There may be no real need that justifies the investment, and the passage of ships remaining undisturbed is more important. For the rest, why aren't Ireland and Scotland connected? Technically, this is the North Channel, and the narrowest point is about 20 kilometers between the Mull of Kintyre and Torhet. But all the attempts at building a bridge here were slightly dislocated from the shortest gap. Most proposals focused on a 30-kilometer span between Port Patrick and Larne. So why isn't there a bridge or tunnel yet? Well, for starters, Burfort's Dike, this little trench in the seafloor, is a dumping ground for millions of tons of munition left over from both world wars. That includes conventional explosives, chemical weapons, even nuclear waste. Not exactly prime real estate for laying foundations. Imagine the nightmare of having to clear out all of this trash. Then all the unexploded ordnances, all of this to maybe have the bridge blow up one day because they forgot one of them behind. Then there's the weather too. The North Channel is rough. High winds, strong tides, fog, and super strong waves. I guess this is why I definitely couldn't swim across. Building here would be a logistical nightmare. Boris Johnson once floated the idea of a bridge, as he often had crazy ideas, and engineers basically laughed it off. Some estimates said it would cost more than £30 billion. Add that to the political situation, not everyone in Northern Ireland is thrilled about stronger ties to mainland Britain, especially physical ones. And not everyone in Scotland wants to be footing the bill for a link to Belfast. There was a ferry running for decades, the famous P&O line, but even that has faced economic challenges in recent years. A fixed link just doesn't seem worth the trouble. But as Northern Ireland becomes closer and closer to reunifying with the South, maybe the British will want to do it as a symbolic attempt at keeping them connected to the UK. And finally, New Zealand is already as remote as it is. Why haven't they bothered to connect the northern and southern islands? This place is called the Cook Strait, and it stretches about only 25 kilometers, so again, not an unthinkable distance for a bridge or even a tunnel. But the sea here, absolutely ruthless. The Cook Strait is infamous for its unpredictable weather, wild tides, strong currents, big swells, gale force winds, you name it. There's a reason the ferry crossing can be more of a thrill ride than a transit service. Even airlines cancel flights due to the turbulence. Any bridge would need to withstand not just the winds, but again, also earthquakes, since New Zealand sits right on top of a tectonic boundary. That adds cost and risk, plus again the terrain on either side is far from flat. You need incredibly long ramps or tunnels just to make it accessible. There have been studies, mostly about tunnels, but the cost estimates are crazy, tens of billions of dollars for a country that doesn't have that many people wanting to cross between the islands. And remember, the ferry is there, it's not perfect, but it works. So those are 5 examples of places that are separated between very narrow bodies of water, but still not being connected by bridges. Either because the terrain at sea doesn't allow it, because the weather is too challenging, because ships need to go by undisturbed, or because there's no real reason to do it. Or maybe it's just too expensive. Or in the North Sea case, that surreal reason of having thousands of World War II ammunition buried down there. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time for more general knowledge. I think you can see the sweat on my face, shirt, everywhere. It's really a struggle right now. But I have a new Moomin mug to show. I don't think I've shown this one in a video before. It's 2 guys hanging out. They found a ruby. It's exciting times for them. And it's very warm times for me.